About your show, what time it comes on and everything.
Sure.
And then give just some of your bio, and then we'll start talking.
Okay. Well, I'm Michael Imhotep, host of the African History Network show, founder of the African History Network. I'm a researcher, lecturer, writer, historian, and talk show host. My show is, I'm on 6 days a week here on 910AM, the Superstation WFDF. I'm on Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time, and then Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I've been on 910 for 5 years in the Sunday time slot. So I do lectures. I'm a researcher, historian. I speak across the country. I write articles. And the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now it's correct wrong behavior. So I'm happy to be on the show with you tonight, Brenda. Happy birthday also. And Charlene Mitchell, it's her birthday as well. Happy birthday to Charlene also.
Yes, it is. Yes, we share birthday with a lot of notable people, but we're the most special people. So Charlene and I.
Right.
So I want to get right into this, and I hope to have you as a regular guest because you will connect the dots. You know, yes. I usually talk politics and community and what we can do to save ourselves, but you give the history. You know, you fill in those spaces, why the things that I talk about are so important. And so I don't want to start with slavery. We beat that to death, and we'll talk about that somewhere down the line. But I want to talk about lynching and why lynching was so effective. And I want to talk about the fact that lynching was not really a tool used in slavery. And you'll give the reasons why lynching became so prevalent after the Emancipation Proclamation.
Well, basically after the 13th Amendment, we know the Emancipation Proclamation, January 1st, 1863, is not what freed the enslaved Africans. It was the 13th Amendment ratified December 6, 1865, when Georgia ratified the 13th Amendment. But lynching becomes a tool largely after slavery ends and especially after Reconstruction ends in 1877. During slavery, the majority of African people, those who are enslaved, they're owned by white people. Okay. And so you don't have a lot of lynchings then, even though you do have some, you don't have a lot because they're property, they're owned by white people. Lynchings become a tool used to terrorize African Americans, to attack the progress that we're making. It becomes a tool of political violence. Also, when we're voting after the Civil War ends, and if people go to the NAACP's national website, naacp.org, they have a section there dealing with lynchings and the history of lynchings. And from 1882 to 1968, there were 4,743 lynchings in the U.S. Okay, 72% were of African Americans. There were white people who were lynched as well. It wasn't just the Ku Klux Klan doing the lynchings, even though they're the dominant domestic terrorist group. You have other groups as well doing lynchings, other domestic terrorist groups, and in some cases they don't have names. They're just white men who are terrorists. You're going to have 1,297 white people who are also lynched during that period of time as well, because the Klan and other groups are attacking not just African Americans, but also white Republicans who were allies to African Americans as well. Okay, so we see this as a tool to try to suppress African Americans, to terrorize us, keep us in a low position in society, and also to disrupt ownership of land, to attack us when it comes to voting, okay, and intimidate us and keep us away from the voter polls. So we see these tactics used. And there was a study that just came out. I'm going to talk about this on my show tonight at 11 p.m. because I'm on after your show tonight. Number of Confederate monuments linked to number of lynchings study finds. Scholars and activists have long said that Confederate memorials are associated with hate. And we see that there's a correlation between where these lynchings are taking place and also Confederate monuments being built. And we know that the state that had the largest number of lynchings was Mississippi. Mississippi had 581 lynchings, and Mississippi is also where Emmett Till was lynched August 28th, 1955 as well.
And so I know you gave a lot of numbers in there, and I hope people get their pens and pencils so they can write it down. And so what you said was that lynching became more prevalent and used as a tool
Yes.
to terrorize the people, much like a lot of the police departments now.
Mm-hmm.
They a rogue group of white folks that decided that they don't want to catch the white man long as they catch the black man, right? And lynch them and put them in electric chairs and things. And also, we have to understand that killing black people while they were property meant that they lost their property. So they were not trying to kill them. They might beat them within an inch of their life, but they wanted them to keep working so that they can make them that money, right?
Yeah, it is less likely to take place during slavery, even though we do see it, but it's to a much lower minimal extent. And then also the movement of African Americans is going to be more controlled during, slavery as well. So you largely see the lynchings taking place after slavery ends. We see it during the Reconstruction era, 1865 to 1877, but you're really going to see it explode.
And tell them why Reconstruction is important, because black people were being elected to office at that time, right?
Yeah, so African American men are voting at this time. You're going to have the 15th Amendment of 1870 ratified, but even before the 15th Amendment, you're going to have some of us voting, and we're electing African American men into political office. So during Reconstruction, you're going to have about 2,000 African American men who get elected into public office, get elected into state legislatures. In South Carolina, the majority of the state legislature was made up of African American men. You're going to have them elected in Mississippi. You're going to have about 20 African American men who become members of U.S. Congress, especially U.S. House of Representatives. You're going to have Senator Bruce out of Mississippi, okay, who becomes a senator from Mississippi. Now it's important at this time, Hiram Rhodes rebels, I should say, Hiram Rhodes rebels out of Mississippi, becomes a senator in Mississippi, U.S. Senator in 1870. Just a quick footnote, at this period of time in history, voters are not voting for U.S. senators. For the first 124 years that the U.S. Senate existed, the state legislatures appointed U.S. senators. Okay, it wasn't until about 1913, 1914 that people started voting for U.S. senators. Okay, so you have to go to senate.gov, which is the official website of the U.S. Senate, senate.gov, and look at the history section and research the history of the U.S. Senate. So we're going to see lynchings along with Confederate monuments. Confederate monuments largely were not created right after slavery ends. Confederate monuments are going to the period of time that we see the largest amount of Confederate monuments built, 2 periods of time, about 1895 to 1915. In 1895 is right before Plessy versus Ferguson. Plessy versus Ferguson, U.S. Supreme Court case, 1896, which legalizes Jim Crow laws. Okay, separate but equal. And this is also at a period of time when the state legislatures are rewriting their state constitutions to codify white supremacy. Okay, Mississippi does this in 1890 with the Mississippi State Convention, and they legalized poll taxes and literacy tests. We're going to see in 1889, Florida is the first state to have poll taxes. We're going to see South Carolina rewrite their state constitution in 1895. Louisiana does in 1898. Alabama, 1901. So after Reconstruction ends, we're going to see this effort from these former Confederate states to take back control of all levels of politics in their states and they start segregating public accommodations, streetcars, railroads, things like this. Okay, so we see 1895 to 1915. 1915 is also the year The Birth of a Nation comes out, February 8th, 1915. And that movie, The Birth of a Nation, and that movie rejuvenates the Ku Klux Klan as well. Then we're going to see from about 1955 through about 1970 through the Civil Rights era. And the erection of these Confederate monuments becomes another way to terrorize African Americans, especially during the Civil Rights era. And they become an opposition to civil rights also. Okay, so and we're going to see a correlation between the Confederate monuments and also after, so we know 1954, Brown versus Board of Education, U.S. Supreme Court case desegregates the schools. Not only are you going to see Confederate monuments being built in, but you're going to see schools that are going to be renamed after Confederate heroes. And you're going to see a usage of the school vouchers to try to keep the schools white as well, private schools. School vouchers for private schools as a way to get around segregation. So we're going to see these two periods of times that we're going to see the most number of Confederate monuments built also.
And so we're going to talk about the Dred Scott decision. But before that, I think that people can hear you that the Republican Party was more of a sympathizer for the Negro than the Democratic Party. The way it is now.
Well, yeah, back during that period of time, yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, back during that period of time, so leading up to the Civil War. So it's important for people to understand. Number one, for the majority of the time that slavery existed in this country, you didn't have a Democratic or Republican Party. The Democratic Party was founded in 1828. They were known as Jacksonian Democrats, named after President Andrew Jackson, who was a white supremacist and the favorite president of another white supremacist president named Donald Trump. And the Republican Party was founded in 1854 by groups of abolitionists as a backlash to what's known as the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which allowed for the westward expansion of slavery, and it left up to people moving into those territories out west to determine whether or not they wanted to have slavery or not. And this incensed a lot of abolitionists. Okay, so early on, yeah, the Republican Party were more advocates for African Americans and especially what are known as the radical Republicans. And we see this, we see the Republicans playing a huge role when it comes to the Reconstruction era. Now, it's also important to note that two important things. One, the Compromise of 1877. After the presidential election of 1876, the Compromise of 1877, you have Republicans conspiring with Democrats to remove the remaining Union troops out of the South if Democrats let Rutherford B. Hayes become president, because neither Rutherford B. Hayes, who was the candidate for the Republicans, or Samuel J. Tilden, who was the candidate for Democrats, neither one had enough electoral college votes to become president. And this argument goes on. This was the November 1876 presidential election. This argument goes on for months. So there's a backroom deal made between Republicans and Democrats to let Rutherford B. Hayes become president, and he'll remove the rest of the Union troops out of the South, which allows the Democrats, the Southerners, to take back control of the Southern politics, the laws, over a period of time. Okay, and this is what happens. And then so you have this betrayal that takes place. And the other thing that's important to note is that toward the end of Reconstruction, there was a waning urgency. There was a waning desire to help African Americans, to help the former slaves as well. Now, in 1928, if people want to ask, well, how do we get to where we are today where things get flipped between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party? That goes back to 1928 and what's known as the Lilly White Movement of 1928, which starts the party realignment that is completed in the mid to late 1960s. See, people mistakenly think that African Americans started switching over to the Democratic Party because of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. No, by 1960, 2/3 of African Americans had already switched over to the Democratic Party. That goes back to the Lilly white movement of 1928, where Republicans ran Herbert Hoover as their candidate for presidency in 1928 against a moderate Democrat named Al Smith, who was from New York. And Republicans appealed to segregationist Democrats in 5 former Confederate states to get them to vote for Herbert Hoover. And Republicans started ignoring the needs and concerns of African Americans. They started ignoring the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. And we slowly started going over to the Democratic Party because we found them more receptive, even though we were leery of them. That goes back to the Lilly white movement of 1928.
And I'm sure my listeners, this is the first time you're hearing about this movement.
Well, if they listen to my show, they've heard about it before. If they listen to my show, they've heard about it before. I don't know how many listen. I don't know how many stay up that late to 11 p.m. But
yes, it's hard at 9 o'clock for some of them to stay awake. But I appreciate them, and they need to listen to your show.
Right.
As well. We have one caller on the line right now. Can we take a call, Michael?
Yeah, that's fine.
Got a couple of minutes before we go to break. We can go ahead and bring her on, and if need be, we can just hold her over to after the break.
Yeah. Okay. No. We're not.
Okay, Nicole, go right ahead.
All right. Good evening to Brenda and your guests.
How you doing?
I wanted to make a comment. Well, hey, how you doing? I wanted to make a comment. You brought up a very great point when you talked about how the Confederate flag and the statues were used to terrorize, Black people. And it's the same thing that's going on right now. They just use different, if it's not a statue, if they tear down a statue, you still have other weapons of terrorism. Whether or not it's the way that they're using water against us, the way that they're terrorizing our communities with this development, the way that they're terrorizing our communities, stripping them from access to just the fundamental rights and the needs that they have. And they keep placing these things right here in the heart of our community, and they pit us against each other. And what it's doing, this level of displacement and gentrification that we have is no different than the way that they were running our people out and making and controlling them and their mindset back then during those times. And I just really wish that we would wake up and see that history just repeats itself over and over again. So what if it's not a statue or a Confederate flag? Even though they're still using those things and they want to hold on to them, they just have different forms of them right now.
Right.
But we don't know our history, and we don't understand that none of this is new.
Right. So this is why we have to fight back, and this is why we have to understand the law, because everything they do to us, they use the law to do it. And when they get caught breaking the law, they go get attorneys at law to defend them in a court of law. So we have to study the U.S. Constitution, state constitutions, and your city charter as well.
And we need to be raised and learned people in our communities. We need to have doctors and lawyers, and that's how they controlled us, because we had to have our own, and that's what Detroit. That's what we used to have with the water when we owned our own water, when we owned our own lighting system, when we didn't have a emergency manager. We owned our own, and we didn't have to go to them for anything.
Well, that's privatization.
Now, under the thumb.
Yeah, that's privatization. Yeah, and they're using privatization around the country to take back control from inner city states, from inner cities where African Americans are the mayors and city council members because of white flight in the 1960s and early 1970s. Yeah, so they're using privatization. Once again, they're using the law. They'll use emergency managers. So we have to understand the tricks and make sure we vote these people out of office and make sure they never get into elected office again either.
And we also have to understand the real law, right? Because not too long ago, I was just watching a video. There were some brothers down in whatever they call that park, right in front of the Kemet, the Kemet Municipal Center. Right in front of there was a group of police officers trying to get them to leave, but they knew their charter.
Mm-hmm.
Nicole, we're coming up against a hard break. Stay on, Nicole. Nicole is running for city council at large. Michael Imhotep, I'm glad you're on. We'll be right back after the commercial break. And it's my birthday.
All right. Stand by, everybody. Stand by. We're on commercial break. My show will be back on at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm on Brenda Hill's show on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. So how's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Hopefully I ain't throwing anybody's schedule off when they think it's 11 p.m. and it's only 9. Okay, but I'm on Brenda's show. She's been asking me to come on her show. Her show is 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Mondays. And, I have to struggle to be able to do my show at 11 p.m. So tonight on my show, we'll talk about the passing of General Colin Powell, 84 years old, former Secretary of State, former General, U.S. Army. We'll talk some about that and his legacy. There's a clip from Roland Martin Unfiltered that I did not get a chance to play on Sunday's show, where we dealt with he's dealing with this white teacher out of Texas who used the N-word in class. Okay. And then he started asking, why isn't there a White History Month? And what about the treatment of the Irish and things like this? We talked about this in Roland Martin Unfiltered. We'll talk about that a little bit on my show. And then we're going to try to squeeze in this topic here dealing with the Confederate monuments. Okay, there was a study that came out. I saw this article. I saw this information late last week. Number of Confederate monuments linked to number of lynchings study finds. So we'll talk about that. We'll try to squeeze that in. We may talk about that for 2 nights. We may talk about that Monday and talk about that a little bit on Tuesday as well. Okay, can you all hear me? Can you all hear me? Stand by. Back from break in 2 minutes.
910, the Superstation, Detroit's only African-American talk radio.
Stand by.
Detroit City Council at large, you got my vote. I want you to complete your statement, your questions for Michael.
Yeah, so no, I was just piggybacking off of what he was saying about we need to know our Constitution. And our Constitution here in the city of Detroit is our city's charter as well. I mean, outside of, knowing the U.S. Constitution. But there was a gentleman down there in front of that park, in front of City Hall, and some officers came up to him and was talking about him and a few others. Now, they were not violating any laws. They were not being a disturbance of any kind. And I think 2 or 3 officers came. The next thing you know, it was another group of officers, and they were trying to tell him, why they had to leave. Well, by the time that brother got done, we citing the charter to them and the laws. Whoever the commander, whoever was in charge, told them, just come on, let's go. Because he knew what his rights were. But what has happened is that so many of our people have become conditioned to listen to these narratives and these sound bites that come on TV from a media that people will often tell you never tell, oh, the media is racist. They just want to make us look bad. But then you feed into everything they tell you. Knowledge is power. For the lack of knowledge, our people will perish. And I see that happening right now. We don't know. And even those who do know, they don't want to know. So they turn a blind eye because they don't want to do anything about it. We have a responsibility to do better and to know better.
And if you don't, you have to be willing to listen, but go to people who do know. Just don't flounder in this what we have now. We're losing everything. But all we have to do is together and vote. Every time we vote in numbers, we win every time. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you. Happy birthday.
Thank you so much. Michael, we have a couple of more callers.
Okay.
Can we get the next caller, please?
Sure. Let's go ahead and bring Mr. Cunningham on.
Hi, Cunningham.
Hey,
Okay, we dropped a call. Hold on just a second. I need to call back. Stand by. We dropped the call. Yeah, this is Michael. This is Michael. Skype dropped the call.
332-334-554. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So please join Zoom tomorrow, and God bless you and happy birthday.
6 o'clock. Raise your hand. All right. Thank you, Cunningham. Charles, you have a question or comment for my guest, Michael Imhotep?
Yes, ma'am. I have a quick question. And a happy birthday celebration to you, Ms. Brenda, and to the spirit of your ancestors as well. My question to Mr. Brother Mike.
Yes.
Imhotep.
Yes.
Imhotep. Brother Imhotep. What is your definition or your interpretation of biracial?
Biracial is basically two people. Is basically a person who is their parents are of two different races. So most commonly it'd be one person whose parents are Black or African American, and one person and their other parent is white. So they say they're biracial. They used to be called mixed race, or at one point they may be referred to derogatorily as a mulatto, or what happened, or what have you. But today, a lot of people have adopted the term biracial.
Okay, so would that be something like, right quick, would that be something like Italian, Greek, Latino, Mexico, Puerto Rico?
Well, Italians and Italians and Greeks are both
maybe
Italians and Greeks. Italians and Greeks are both classified as.
Also,
can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Italians and Greeks are both classified as Europeans or whites, based upon this country. So if it's somebody, so if it's somebody who one parent is Black, one parent is white, like Meghan Markle, okay, then she considers herself biracial.
Do you think that it's more respectful or to use what is your ethnicity, the culture, what is your tradition, rather than to say just plain straight up Black and white?
Compare. You asking me?
Mike.
Yeah.
And thank you for your question and comment, Charles. It's up to the person.
It's up to them.
What they would like to be referred to as. If you're biracial, most people call you Black. They don't call you biracial. But, they have that on the federal forms.
On the census form.
And you get to pick what your descent is. So it's really up to the person to decide if they want to be called biracial at all. Some people don't even want to be called biracial at all. We have another caller, David. If you have a question or comment.
Yeah, I got a question. What book does Mike, can you recommend reading about the transition when African Americans left the Republican Party and joined Democrats? Does he have a book you can recommend read about that information?
One, you can read Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr. because in the history that's covered in the book, they deal with that period of history. Number one. Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr. Also, you can look at, I think, in Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr.'s book, African Americans, Many Rivers to Cross. I think he deals with that period of time in there as well. That period of time, 1928 through the mid 1960s, is a crucial period of time of history, because it's after World War I, 1914 and 1918. It's before World War II, 1941, 1945, at least the U.S. Involvement in the war. And we see a changing America as well. Okay. Also, you can go to history.house.gov. House.gov is the official website of the U.S. House of Representatives. They have a history section there. They have a piece there on party realignment. They give some background history. I've done an entire lecture dealing with the history of why African Americans switched from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. But those are some reference points you can start with. Very few people talk about the Lily White movement in 1928, which was a Southern strategy, by the way.
You can find that in that on that website, history.
Yeah,
history.gov.
History.house.gov. HOUSE house.gov.
Yeah, how find that information about the literary white movement.
Yes, house.gov is the official website of the U.S. House of Representatives, and they have a history section there also.
Okay. Well, that book before the Mayflower, I bought that book in 1982. After this recently got damaged with flood. But it's hard to find that copy now.
You can check a local. You check a local African American owned bookstore. There's also on Amazon.
Well, I tried Amazon. It's very pricey on Amazon to get a copy of it since it's death. I think it was 93. I think was the last time he had updated before his death, before the Mayflower. I bought the copy in 1982.
Okay.
And it got damaged. I recently lost it. Got damaged. I was kind of collectors, and I've been trying to get another one ever since, and it's hard to find before the Mayflower.
You may have to pay that price, or you can listen to Michael's show.
Actually, I'm a fan of the show. I hear him every night. I'm up at that time.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm up at that time. So all right, thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Michael, I want to talk about the Dred Scott decision and how it was pivotal, in shaping what we know now is going on in this country.
Okay. So the Dred Scott U.S. Supreme Court case was ruled March 6, 1857. It's a complicated case. I'm gonna try to simplify it for the sake of time. Okay. So Dred Scott was a slave born in Southampton County, Virginia, 1799. He and his master, along with Dred Scott's family, they're going to go into they're going to move around various territories. All right. His first master was Peter Blow. Okay. And Peter Blow, they're going to be in the Missouri territory, which is slaveholding territory. All right. Peter Blow is going to die, and then he's going to be purchased by Dr. John Emerson, who's an army surgeon, okay, in 1832. They're going to travel around. One of the places they travel to is Illinois, which is a free state, okay? The state of Illinois abolishes slavery in 1818. They're also going to travel to Fort Snelling in the Wisconsin territory, okay? Now, it's important to understand two pieces of history. One is the Missouri Compromise of 1820. Because the Missouri Compromise of 1820 plays a role in the Dred Scott case in the ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court. And then also the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which I mentioned a few minutes ago. The Kansas-Nebraska Act repealed the Missouri Compromise. the Missouri Compromise of 1820, what it did was it dealt with the territory that the U.S. got in the 1803 Louisiana Purchase. The U.S. gets about 828,000 square miles of land. The U.S. is going to carve out about 15 states out of the Louisiana Purchase, including the state of Louisiana. And the Missouri Compromise of 1820 allowed Missouri to come into the U.S. as a slaveholding state and allowed Maine to come in as a free state, because with the acquisition of land, they tried to keep a balance between slaveholding states and free states. Okay, so and then the Missouri Compromise also stated that it banned slavery in those other territories in part of the Louisiana Purchase. It banned slavery then. Okay, so they go into Wisconsin, which is free territory because of the Missouri Compromise. All right, so you're going to have a situation where eventually Dred Scott is going to sue for his freedom. Okay, and his argument is that they lived in free territory like Wisconsin, and his slave master is eventually going to go back into Missouri. All right, that's slaveholding state. So they sue. He sues for his freedom, and initially, the lower court in Missouri rules in favor of Dred Scott. Okay, and actually, it's going to be Dred Scott and his wife. They're going to file separate lawsuits for their freedom. Initially, the lower court rules in his favor. Then it is going to be appealed. The case goes all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. All right, the U.S. Supreme Court in a 7-2 ruling, March 6, 1857. Rules that what they do is they nullify the Missouri Compromise of 1820. They ruled that the Missouri Compromise of 1820 was unconstitutional because they said that the federal government had no right to had no power to prevent the spread of slavery. So one, they ruled that the Missouri Compromise, which made slavery in the territory of Wisconsin illegal, they ruled that's unconstitutional. One. Two, Chief Justice Taney, in his majority opinion, said that people of African descent, free or enslaved, were not United States citizens and therefore had no right to sue in federal court. All right.
And I want you to make those two statements again. They said that free state, free to African American or former slaves, had no right to tell the government that. Repeat that whole thing.
Okay, so two main things that it did. The ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court, March 6, 1857, it ruled that the Missouri Compromise of 1820 was unconstitutional. Number one, and they stated that the U.S. Congress had no power to prevent the spread of slavery, okay, into these new territories. So one. Two, Chief Justice Taney, in his majority opinion, stated that people of African descent, free or enslaved, were not United States citizens and therefore had no right to sue in federal court. Okay, keep in mind, this is 1857. This is before the Civil Rights Act of 1866, and this is before the 14th Amendment of 1868, which gives citizenship to African Americans. This is before then. This is before the 13th Amendment is ratified December 6, 1865. Okay, so what's going to happen is
I want to stop right there. I want you to go back to 1806 when they said that no more Africans could be brought to this country and enslaved, right?
1808.
So
1808.
years after that.
1808. So okay, so you're talking about January 1st, 1808. The international transatlantic slave trade is outlawed in the U.S. Okay. The reason why it was outlawed January 1st, 1808 is because of Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution. at the Philadelphia Convention in 1787, where they're debating the Constitution. It's important to note, number one, 5 states had already abolished slavery by 1787, starting with Vermont in 1777, 10 years earlier. And you have some abolitionists that are there also at the Philadelphia Convention who are delegates. So all of the colonies at this time in 1787, all of them agreed to abolish the international transatlantic slave trade, except for South Carolina. The international transatlantic slave trade means bringing Africans into the country to enslave them. Okay, so because they could not come to a unanimous agreement, they put a 20-year clause in the U.S. Constitution that stated that the earliest that the international transatlantic slave trade could be abolished would be 1808. All right, so you're going to have international treaties between European countries to abolish the international transatlantic slave trade also, that they're going to violate this. The U.S. is going to enter into these treaties in 1808, about 1807, 1808. England does it also. Great Britain, they do it in 1807 as well. So January 1st, 1808, the law goes into effect. And this helps to form the foundation of a legal argument for reparations also, because all the Africans brought to this country from January 1st, 1808 through July 1860, when the Clotilda comes into Alabama, is illegal based upon federal law. The U.S. court cases that back this up, one of the strongest court cases is the 1841 U.S. Supreme Court case of the Amistad slave ship. We all saw the movie Joseph Q, Give Us Free, things like this. But people don't understand why they were set free. They won their freedom in the U.S. Supreme Court because the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that it was illegal for the Amistad slave ship to come into U.S. waters because the international transatlantic slave trade had been abolished. 1, 2, they ruled that those Africans were never slaves. And 3, they ruled that they had a right to take up arms and fight for their freedom in the mutiny on the slave ship. Okay, so this is a landmark U.S. Supreme Court case. If people go to archives.gov, which is the U.S. National Archives, search for the Amistad slave ship, they have some of the original court documents there, and they tell you about this case and the court ruling also. All right, now the selling of the ownership of African slaves was still legal within the U.S. You just couldn't bring any more in. Okay, so the international transatlantic slave trade was outlawed, but it was legal to own slaves in states where it had not been abolished. And Missouri was one of those states where it's legal to own slaves, but we know Illinois had abolished slavery in 1818. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, so we're going to jump forward 50 years to the Dred Scott decision.
Right. Now it's important to note. So he loses this case, but he is going to be awarded his freedom. He's going to be given his freedom a few months after this case in May of 1857, because his owner. So the U.S. Supreme Court was Scott versus Sanford. Okay, and Sanford was John Sanford, who was the brother of his owner, okay, who was Irene Emerson. Irene Emerson was the widow of Dr. Emerson, okay, who was his previous owner. So Irene Emerson is going to marry an abolitionist and a U.S. congressman named Calvin Chaffee, Chaffee. And when he marries her, he finds out that she still owns Dred Scott, whose real name was Sam Blow, okay, which goes back to his first slave owner named Peter Blow. He finds out that she still owns him and, his family, and then he grants them their freedom. All right. But we have to keep in mind that this is 1857. This is before the 13th Amendment of 1865 and the 14th Amendment of 1868.
So I'm trying to look at time. And so we're going to jump around a little bit to get to this Ahmad Arbery case.
Okay.
The selection of the jury started today. So we're going to talk about, so we got that bringing in slaves was abolished in 1808.
Correct.
With some other states. We jumped to...
Well, that was abolished. That was federal law. That was federal law.
Federal law, right?
Yeah.
Right, federal law.
Mm-hmm.
Then we jump to the Dred Scott decision. The Supreme Court says that we don't have to, nobody has to listen to what black folks want, right?
Well, they said that people of African descent, free or enslaved, were not United States citizens and therefore had no rights to sue in the federal court. Now, this is before 1857, but that's before the U.S. Constitution is amended in 1865 and 1868.
1865, and that's the Civil War, right?
It's before the Civil War.
The United States.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Yeah. 1857 was before the U.S. Civil War that starts April 12, 1861 in South Carolina.
And then we have the U.S. president, though the North was losing the war. He said that I'll grant you your freedom if you fight for the North. That means that you are U.S. citizens at that point, right?
Well, the Constitution hasn't been amended yet. Are you referring to what? So the Emancipation Proclamation is going to be a turning point after the Battle of Antietam. It's going to be a turning point in the U.S. Civil War, issued January 1st, 1863. The initial Emancipation Proclamation was issued September 22nd, 1862. It stated that the slaves in the territories of rebellion would be freed if those territories did not come back into the Union by January 1st, 1863. But it also stated that the slaves in the territories that were border states that stayed loyal to the Union, Missouri, Kentucky, Delaware, Maryland, that they could keep their slaves. Okay. So those border states that stayed loyal to the Union were allowed to keep their slaves after the Emancipation Proclamation issued January 1st, 1863. It was a military strategy that Lincoln used to try to bring the South back into the Union, because the Civil War was never fought to end slavery. The Civil War was initially fought to keep the Union together and bring the South back into the Union, which was the economic engine of the U.S.
Seceded already. They had gotten Jefferson Davis as their president. They had moved on.
Yeah, they seceded from the Union. Yeah, so South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union, December 20th, 1860. And they're going to, and then you're going to have other states that follow, and they're going to form the Confederate States of America, the CSA, the Confederacy. They're going to elect Jefferson Davis of Mississippi, slave owner from Mississippi, as their president. Okay. And March 4th, 1861, at Lincoln's inaugural address, he says he has no intention of ending slavery in states where it already exists. Okay, because he's trying to keep the Union together, and he's trying to keep more Southern states from seceding from the Union also. All right, so the South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union, December 20th, 1860, 6 weeks after Lincoln becomes president-elect in that November 1860 presidential election, because he's of the party of the Republican Party, which is made up of groups of abolitionists, and South Carolina thinks that Lincoln's going to free the slaves. This is why they secede from the Union.
So now we're after Emancipation Proclamation.
Mm-hmm.
So the southern states that had seceded are brought back into the Union
after the Civil War. After the Civil War ends in 1865. Yeah.
After the Civil War ends,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there was a period called Reconstruction after that.
Yeah, 1865 to 1877.
And the ending of the Civil War was
right? The Civil War basically ends April 9th, 1865, when General Robert E. Lee surrenders to General Ulysses S. Grant at the Appomattox Courthouse. That basically ends the U.S. Civil War.
And so the period from 1865 to
1877.
1877 is called Reconstruction.
Correct.
That's when the rise of the black man, particularly, into politics happened, right?
Yeah.
And then we had an uptick in lynching.
Yeah.
And public lynchings at that.
Well, public lynchings, and they're also attacking elected African American elected officials and white Republican elected officials, especially in the South. And this is why, in 1871, you have the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871 passed by Congress. October 1871, President Ulysses S. Grant, who was General Grant, he institutes martial law in 9 counties in South Carolina to crack down on the Ku Klux Klan and domestic terrorists who are attacking African Americans, killing them, attacking elected officials, things like this. That's using the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. Okay, so you're gonna have this period of time when the South is being brought back into the Union. You have rights given to African Americans. You have, in some cases, land given to African Americans, like Special Field Order Number 15, 40 acres and a mule. Most of the lands is going to be taken back by President Andrew Johnson, who succeeds Lincoln. Johnson is from Tennessee. He's sympathetic to the former slave owners. He's going to give them back basically all their land. But you're going to have things like the Freedmen's Bureau created in March 1865 to the U.S. Bureau of Freedmen, Refugees, and Abandoned Lands to help not just former slaves, but also help destitute white people, because there are a lot of destitute white people as well after the Civil War ends. You're going to have the Freedmen's Bank created as well. So you're going to have this effort to integrate African Americans into society, try to help them. It was underfunded and mismanaged in many ways. It was underfunded and mismanaged. It wasn't as long. It should have been much longer. The commitment to repairing the damage, if you will, started waning toward later in the 1870s. Okay. And you had allegations of corruption in President Grant's administration and things like this. So when you have the presidential election of 1876, all this is like really coming to head with the presidential election of 1876, Rutherford B. Hayes versus Samuel J. Tilden.
So we're running out of time.
You want to talk about Ahmad Arbery?
You
want to talk about Ahmad Arbery?
Yes. We haven't even gotten to 1900 yet. So when you come back,
yeah, you have to bring it back.
I'm already taking your time.
Okay.
We're going to start there. I want to jump to today.
Yeah.
Ahmad Arbery's trial started.
Right.
But I want you to just tell the folks, what kind of climate caused that to happen. The fact that these guys felt like they could hunt a black man down
sure.
and kill him. And then they lost 3 prosecutors that lied and did not want to prosecute this.
Right, prosecutors didn't want to prosecute.
Okay.
Yeah, because Greg McMichaels, who's a former police officer, worked in the office of one of the prosecutors there, and the female prosecutor, did not want to prosecute that case. Basically, what you're looking at, Georgia has the largest Confederate monument in this country. It's called Stone Mountain. Okay, in Stone Mountain, Georgia. On the side of Stone Mountain, it's a huge mountain. On the side of Stone Mountain are the carvings of General Robert E. Lee, Thomas Stonewall Jackson, and Jefferson Davis. Okay, 3 traitors to the Union, slave owners who fought in the Civil War to maintain slavery. So what you had is 3 men who basically allegedly took the law into their own hands, who thought they could do this. Okay, now it's not clear if they, and having researched this from the beginning, it's not clear if they hunted him down to actually kill him, or if that's what evolved, or they just hunted him down to apprehend him. Okay, but here's what we do know. While he was laying there dying, Ahmad, one of them called him the N-word. We also know on Travis McMichael's car, he had a vanity plate of a Confederate battle flag, which is similar to the Georgia state flag, the previous Georgia state flag that they got rid of sometime in the 2000s. Okay, had the Confederate battle flag on it. So also what we know is that William Roddy Bryan, he initially, when the police came on the scene, he said his involvement was more so than just being a bystander. Okay, he talked about trying to box him in try to box Ahmad in with his car, and he recorded it. Okay, later when this blew up, then he tried to say he was just a bystander, but that's not what you told police, and it's recorded on body cam footage as well. Okay,
Right.
so this is a interesting case. It looks like many people call this a modern day lynching. It looks like this. It looks like it is, whether they intended to it to be that from the beginning, or that's how it ended. But that's what it appears to look like.
Well, Michael, many white folks had walked into that house.
Yes.
And done the same thing and looked around.
Right.
They didn't hunt them down.
They didn't hunt them down. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
The owner did not ask them to step in on their behalf. The owners did not see anything wrong with several people walking in and seeing the inside of the house. The house was
right.
open
There's surveillance
for
footage of
anybody.
that. There's surveillance footage of many other white people walking in and nothing happening to them, them not being hunted down. Exactly. No, thanks for having me. And listen to my show at 11 p.m. here, and visit my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, also, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right, Brenda, take care. Happy birthday. Yep. Okay. Yep. Bye. All right, guys, we got to get out of here. Okay, I'll be back at 11 p.m. I have to get ready for my show. Okay. If you like this type of information, also, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App. Then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. If you like the type of history I was sharing, you can register. I teach 2 online courses, 2 10-week online courses dealing with this history, especially from 1865 to 1968. Okay. That is from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And that's at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll post a link here also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Just scroll right down the website, and you'll see the information from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. So we deal with a lot of that history I was just talking about, that period of time. And we deal with some history what leads up to the Civil War taking place. This class is regularly $130. It's on sale $80. I mean, actually, it's on sale $70 right now. It's discounted $70. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are recorded, and you can go back and watch it over and over again. Okay, we do the sessions live. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again, and you still have access to the full class even after the class is over. So if you want to go and watch the full course next year, you still have access to it. We just posted a link here. You can register for that, and that's from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement of Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And the other class that I teach is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This next class is Sunday, October 24th. Okay. We do this 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. This class is on sale $80, regularly $130, and it's the same format. You can watch it anytime as well. We do it live on Sundays. We do it live, but you can go back and watch it anytime also. Okay. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. All right. We'll post this link here for this one as well. Okay. If you want to register for both classes, we have a special discount for a couple days here. You can register for both classes for $100. Okay, that's because the regular price is $260. Let's see here. And yeah, we have a special bonus here. You can register your course bundle for $100 for a limited time only. All right. Look, we have to get out of here. I have to get ready for my show at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you later. Peace.